Hey, so today I want to talk a little bit about utilizing psychedelics as a part of your spiritual path. Back when I was 17, 18, and I started, well, actually, started a bit earlier than that, but we won't go into that. Started using psychedelics for me, having always been looking for God, basically, even as a young child. Um, I'd always been looking for the love. I suppose there was a certain level of oh, a certain level of feeling bereft of it in my childhood. Even though, bless them, our parents do the very best they can with the tools and the woundings that they come in with. So love and forgiveness to all parents everywhere. But as a child, I felt quite isolated and quite bereft of love. So I was looking for love. And because when I was really little, I was really bowled over by Jesus and teachings of Jesus and the Father that he talked about. I was a little bit disenchanted when I read the Old Testament in RE as a slightly older child, which was disappointing, but still, Jesus was a beautiful being, and that kind of led my way to looking for God and looking for love, but inside, not so much outside. And then when I was a bit younger than 17, I came across magic mushrooms, and that was like a whisper of it. It brought me closer. And so that was my first experience of mind alteration. Um, uh, okay, not entirely, but other than messing around with your breath when you're a child and doing other silly breathing things. But that was my first experience of mind alteration. And so then when I was 17 and I started coming into contact with LSD and more magic mushrooms, for me it was a spiritual path. It revealed truth to me. It healed woundings in me. I'd been depressed for 3 months with a chest infection that wouldn't go away. And on one LSD trip, whilst listening to Lenny Kravitz, I simply realised I didn't need to be ill or unhappy anymore. I don't even know why I was. I didn't need to go to the root of it. I just recognised I didn't need to. The next morning, after I slept and I woke up, my cold was gone. No more coughing, chest infection, and I didn't cry or feel miserable. So nowadays, now I can talk about this. Now it's acceptable. Back when I was in my teens and early 20s, I was the only person I knew that was taking psychedelics for spiritual awakening, for spiritual development. Everybody else I knew, even most of my friends, were just doing it to go out and party, doing it to have a good time. Whoa, visuals, man. All of that stuff. And so I felt quite alone. Whereas now, there's a whole different world out there. Everybody's going to ceremony, everyone's praying and doing all sorts of things with all these beautiful plants that the earth's blessed us with, in order to purify, in order to uplift their consciousness, in order to see truly, in order to heal their trauma. So I basically was taking a lot of psychedelics between the age of 17 and 20. I grew up in Frome. I was born in Frome. And at the age of 17, I got together with Froome's cannabis dealer, who was a bit older than me, who was 28, and also every now and again LSD would come and go. So we lived in this epic house, myself, my boyfriend, my brother, and all of his mates, and all of the people that would come and score their pot. So we just had like a big tribal party house, which I did love, and I was the only woman for a while until the other ones came along. If you're watching, girls, I love you. And yeah, but tripping wasn't a spiritual thing, but for me it was. So when I was the only person working in that house. Everyone else was just getting munted all the time. I was working in a special needs school, caring for a very special being, and that luckily gave me the merit to, at the end of that job when she passed away, to take redundancy and go travelling. And I was either going to go to South America or Asia, but because of certain coincidences and synchronicities, I ended up going to Asia. And I then spent the next 12 years going to India and Nepal. Most autumn, winters and spring, I would come back in the summer, work my butt off, save up more money and go back again for as long as the money would last. And I was fortunate because basically at the age of 17, whilst all camping on a beach, I had what I now understand to be a kind of Kundalini awakening, whilst on LSD. And obviously, because it happened under the influence of psychedelics, I kind of discounted it, because also when things happen on psychedelics, once we come down, a lot of our old shit kind of basically comes back. And we might have had that insight, we might have had that flash of realization, but the integration of it into our life is something else. And this is where the spiritual practice comes in. So at the age of 23, I started traveling to Asia. And the second year I went, I met two enlightened teachers that both took me under their wing. And on the second trip, or third trip maybe, I don't know, I made quite a lot of trips. I was getting deeply into Tibetan Buddhism and yoga. There were two lineages that called to me. One was the Saraswati lineage of Satyananda, and one was the Tibetan Buddhist school of Tibetan Buddhism of Vajrayana. And so I figured I needed to integrate these experiences and understand them, but also to put my roots down, to get my roots down, to learn to meditate properly, to clear my mind, to purify all the shit karma that I really felt I had. And when I say shit karma, I mean the inner state of my heart, basically. The cause and effect, the shame, the remorse we have for living unimpeccably. And impeccability, that's a big word, so I'll bring it down a little bit, but just not living that well, because the propensities, the habits, the cravings, the desires, the longings, the thinking that I'm separate from everything else, that I lack, all of this stuff keeps us striving, keeps us in a state of lack rather than fullness. So, yeah. It's very wet outside today. So I met two amazing teachers, and again, at the end of 3 months of doing 7-8 hours of sadhana a day and spending time in the auric field of enlightened beings, I felt so complete, so whole, so cleansed. And I was in Varanasi, and I had a handful of magic mushrooms that I'd taken with me for that trip, just in case. But I had no desire, no need to take them. And I was holding them, and I said to the Gat and to the space and Great Spirit, I've got these mushrooms. I can offer them to the Gat, or I can take them. And the moment I said take them, this almighty shooting star shot across the sky. And so the next night I took them, and then had a very profound evening. And it wasn't a huge amount of mushrooms, but I'd done a huge amount of practice. And utilizing the teachings of Buddhism, of emptiness, of the emptiness of mind, of the lack of inherent self, even though here I am. The duality in the non-duality. All of these teachings are there to guide us. They're there to help us. All the teachings that we could possibly ever need are all already here. The teachings of Christ, the teachings of Buddha. Whether they were real people or not, it doesn't really matter to me. The teachings that are here now, they hold everything we could possibly need to awaken and to live as full and complete human beings, with the descent of God fully within us, fully within our hearts, living from a place of truth and love and compassion and joy and beauty. And but what I'm wanting to get to is the utilization of both together. So when I was a kid, I knew lots of people tripping out, but nobody on a spiritual path. When I went to India, I knew lots of people on a spiritual path, but only maybe one or two of them, you know who you are, had tripped out in any significant manner, or in a spiritual manner, in a way that they recognized had helped them along their path. But generally within the spiritual lineages, it was kind of considered bad or cheating. or just dangerous. And it is, I acknowledge it can be dangerous. If somebody goes and necks a stupid amount of magic mushrooms with the level of delusion that we have in our mind, you're going to have a messy night and you might hurt yourself. So that's, I'm not saying, hey everyone, go and take loads of mushrooms. I'm not, because you have to work on your mind. But once you've started to do mind training, once you've started to recognize the amount of stuff that churns through your mind, and you start discerning and choosing which one to feed, which one not to feed, which one, you find yourself criticizing or judging somebody, you recognize that's taking place, you antidote it. You just pull it in. You don't beat yourself up. You don't chastise yourself. You simply recognize it, let it go, and antidote it with, actually, they're probably going through a really shit time. Actually, they probably had a really shit childhood. They're probably carrying a load of pain. How many nice people behave horribly? Most people that behave unpleasantly, they behave that way because they're hurting inside, because their inner world isn't a very nice one. So how does me being horrible back to them really benefit anybody? And if I can work on cleaning up my inside, then I have a much better foundation to meet that pain, to meet that suffering with compassion, with understanding, and without turning the wheel and adding to it. If somebody wants to insult me, if somebody wants to get angry at me because sometimes I talk shit, that's fine. I can hold a boundary. I can say, no, I'm not taking this, but I don't need to turn the wheel and insult them back and get pulled into the drama of cyclical stupid shit. So this is the importance of the spiritual practice. This is the importance of the mind training. Without that, you're just going to be tripping balls, imagining all sorts of shit, falling into every fear your mind could come up with, freaking out, all the sorts of stuff. You do a high enough dose, everything's going to be turning inside out. Every fear you could possibly imagine will come to your mind, and see if you will still collapse in it and freak out in the duality. So non-dual teachings, they're great, but the relative teachings need to be respected, because most of us still think we're separate beings. If you truly know yourself to not be separate from everybody else you meet, then okay, embrace the non-dual teachings fully, which you probably already are. But if you still live a relative experience where you very definitely feel separate from everyone else, and you very definitely feel pushed and pulled by your emotions and your thoughts, then don't try and spiritually bypass and tell yourself, it's all fine, it's all God, it's all divine, it's all nectar. This is just bullshit. And yes, it is all divine, and yes, it is all nectar, and yes, it is all primordially pure, and yes, we are already enlightened. But unless you actually feel like you're enlightened, don't surrender it all and go, it's all. And yeah, I say don't surrender it all. I shouldn't have used that word, because actually trust is the key to all of it. The trust that love will prevail, even though for the last few thousand years it doesn't seem to have, and it's really hard to trust in something where the world and the media, the media, stop watching telly, stop reading the newspapers, because they're just churning out fear to make you either feel scared or angry. And both of those feedback loops, both of those algorithmic echo chambers generate more of themselves. So if you want the wars to stop in the world, if you want people to stop being horrible to each other, you've got to disconnect from it, and you've got to stop feeding it. You've got to stop feeling angry at the ones causing the war, because our anger is what is causing wars. Our hatred, our bitterness, our resentfulness at them, that very energy is what is feeding into and perpetuating all the anger and the hatred on this earth. The anger and the hatred and the destruction will only stop when we stop being angry and hate-filled. And so this is where we have to evoke a spiritual practice and practice it. This is where we can utilize the plants that the earth's given us to help us on our way, to help us gain insight gradually, with guidance, with ceremony, with people that are further along the path than we are to hold that space and to guide us within that space. So this, this is a very powerful time we're in right now, and it's a magical time, and we are bringing in a new dawn because it's time. We've spent enough time rolling around in the gutter, and it's time for us to pick ourselves up and brush ourselves down and pick everybody else up that's ready to, and help each other out and make this world a beautiful world. It's really hard to be a loving being in a culture that's filled with hatred and fear. So rather than being angry at the culture for being full of hatred and anger, turn away from it and make a new one. Don't feed it. Don't get angry at it. Don't let it suck your energy back into it. Leave it be. Put your energy, your love, your compassion, your effort, your willfulness into a new culture, a new paradigm, which many of us are creating. So many of us are creating. COVID was possibly a bit of a coup to try and bring the population down, to get everybody in control, because we're all getting out of control, because we're all waking up. And what did it do? It woke more people up. It made more people go, oh my God, I need something meaningful in my life. Oh my God, I really miss the park. I really miss the ocean. It's really important, because it is really important. We haven't been thinking of the 7 generations to come. We've just been thinking about ourselves, and that needs to change. We've been caught up in a flurry of distraction and short-term thinking of what I want. And those days are coming to an end, because it's not how it works. So yeah, anyway, I won't go on. Spiritual practice and psychedelic use. Lightning vehicle. But do it with care, do it with guidance, do it with people that are grounded, not the first person you find on the internet that's charging some stupid amount of money for whatever. Someone you know, someone that you find with people that have done work with them. Okay, you don't need to go running off to the jungle. If you're in the UK, these beautiful beings grow all around us every year in abundance. Their mycelium is literally hugging us. But we need to be careful and cautious, and we need to do the work. We need to do the spiritual practice. We need to read the teachings. We need to seek guidance. We need to pray. We need to pray to the beings that have gone ahead of us. My friend says, beings of light that have left a trail of light for us to follow. We need to catch that trail of light, and we need to follow it with diligence and with an open and loving heart. Okay, peace.